Chapter 753. Gu Mingming shrugged her shoulders in exasperation. Snake doesn't like you staring at me like that. Wabiai's eyes brightened. He immediately leaned forward, wanting to ask but refusing to admit it. You are spouting nonsense. He didn't know I was staring at you when you went to meet the beast deity. Gu Mingming turned her head and pointed at the mark on the back of her neck. What did you say just now? Say it again? Wabiai stared at the lifelike mark, which had shrunk to the size of a palm. He was momentarily dazed. After a long pause he muttered, Could it be, his soul is still living in your body? You can sense his emotions and communicate with him? Then, can you ask him to come out and talk to me? Just one sentence. Even punching me or glaring at me will do. Gu Mingming burst out laughing. Her expression was extremely nasty. You actually believe such nonsense? How did you survive for the past 800 years? Wabiai was taken aback. He was instantly enraged. His eyes narrowed into slits and his poisonous fangs dripped with venom. Gu Mingming stretched out her fair arm in front of Wabiai. You want to bite me? Here, bite me then. Wabiai opened his mouth but still couldn't bite her. Her arm was too thin. It was not even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. If he bit her, it would break. If her arm broke, who knew how heartbroken that person would be? Look at how you can't stand me and can't do anything to me. How are you like the legendary mighty Wabiai? TSK little shit, just accept your fate. You can't do anything to me. Little shit. Wabiai repeated those two words through gritted teeth. His face was so black that ink could drip from it. Rolling his eyes, Wabiai gave a sinister smile. Since ancient times, the male has to pay for the female's troubles. I can't touch you, but I can challenge your partner. Guess if that stupid wolf and that coquettish fox of yours are enough to fill the gaps between my teeth? Gu Mingming shrugged and stood up from Elvis's arms. She bent down and smiled at Elvis. Hubby, he said he wants to challenge you. Elvis sneered and stood up. He twisted his neck left and right as a form of warm-up. That's great. This is a barren mountain and there's no need to be afraid of destruction. It's suitable for exercising. Wabiai's eyes brightened as he looked at Gu Mingming. Can we really fight? Gu Mingming sat at the side drinking water and looked at Wabiai. Why are you asking me? It's not like you're fighting me. After Snake left, Wabiai had not met a suitable opponent for a long time. He was extremely dispirited after not battling for so long. On the other hand, Elvis was also very depressed. Ever since they were in the Snake King Valley, he had been feeling sullen and powerless. This evil fire had been pressing on his chest, but he could not find a suitable opportunity to vent it out. He was at the peak of the 5th rank. He should be able to take a beating. Both of them rubbed their palms together in anticipation, but Gu Mingming waved at Ian and said, Hey bro, do you want to join in the fun? WDO Wildlife and Death Edition, it should be quite exciting. Ian sat over with a flustered expression. He glanced at Gu Mingming and pointed at the two beasts who were ready to strike. Are we really going to let them fight? Aren't you afraid of getting into trouble? Chapter 754. When Leah returned, he saw the ground littered with debris and two exhausted males sprawled on the ground, looking like they were on their last breaths. He walked suspiciously over to Gu Mingming, who was calmly drinking from a cup of hot water. He looked at Ian, who looked as if he had seen a ghost, and could not understand the situation at all. He skewered the processed prey on the tree sap and then placed it over the fire to roast. As he roasted, he said, I didn't bring a pot when I came out, so I'll have to trouble you to eat a roasted meal for the time being. I'll look for suitable ingredients on the way and dig a pot to bring along. I'll cook something for you that's easy to digest at night. Gu Mingming nodded as a form of agreement. She still had a faint smile on her face. Leah pointed at the two males who were sprawled on the ground, unable to transform back into human form. He asked, These two, what happened? Gu Mingming smacked her lips and smiled. The two of them just engaged in an unfriendly physical conversation. Leah was taken aback. Wabiai challenged Elvis? Gu Mingming nodded as a form of reply. Lee's expression darkened. He asked with a cold gaze, Who won? Gu Mingming glanced at him. It should be considered a draw? Both of their injuries are not light and they look like they're half dead. Leah lifted his head. Since there's no clear victor, he can't join our family. Oh. Gu Mingming was taken aback. She then laughed. You can't be thinking that Wabiai challenged Elvis to mate with me, right? Leah did not find it funny at all. He frowned. No. Gu Mingming shook her head. They just had nothing better to do and had a meaningless fight. Leah looked suspiciously at Elvis and then at Wabiai. Only then did he calm down. That's good. At least he knows his place. Gu Mingming leaned into Li's arms. She chuckled. Suppressing one's emotions for too long will cause one to become a pervert. What about you? Do you need to find an opponent to vent? I think Ian is a good choice. Both of you have similar skills and should be able to spar. Leah planted a kiss on Gu Mingming's forehead. Then he smiled gently. This kind of violent and barbaric method is not suitable for me. If I want to release my stress, no one but you can do it. Li's voice was light as a feather caressing Gu Mingming's heart. Every time he said a word, the feather would flutter, making Gu Mingming's heart itch. Gu Mingming gently pushed Leah away. She might not be the best in the beast world, but no one in the beast could beat her in the beast. Wabi was lying on his back. After being beaten up by Snake for 800 years, perhaps his combat power was not the best, but no one in the beast world could beat him in terms of endurance. After resting for such a long time, Wabi could already transform back into his human form. His face was bruised and swollen, but there was an inexplicable sense of comfort throughout his body. Wabi had broken 2 of Wabi's ribs. He could not transform into his human form for now. But this bout of venting had allowed him to release all the pent-up anger in his chest. Elvis had 2 of his ribs broken by Wabi. He could not transform into his human form for the time being. But this bout of venting had allowed all the pent-up anger in his chest to dissipate. Chapter 755. He looked at Gu Mingming with an exceptionally gentle gaze. Even a wolf's eyes could not conceal that tenderness. His female really understood him. However, Li's words had enlightened him. Compared to fighting with Wabi, perhaps a battle with Gu Mingming would be more effective. Gu Mingming held Elvis's face in her hands. It was clearly a fierce wolf's face, but she did not feel the slightest bit afraid. Even if she stuck her hand into Elvis's mouth to count how many teeth he had, she would not feel the slightest bit nervous. She kissed Elvis. The way you look at me is not pure. It's as if you want to eat me up. Elvis thought to himself, you guessed it right. I really want to eat you up. Gu Mingming patted Elvis lightly. All right, you just stay here and have a good rest today. We will not continue on our journey today. We will set off tomorrow when you are better. Elvis did not have any objections and just nodded. After all, during the 3 days that Gu Mingming was asleep, they had been traveling at a very fast pace. They had been waiting for Gu Mingming to wake up so that they could slow down and not tire her out. Gu Mingming walked to Wabi's side and sat down. She gave him a faint smile. How is it? My taste in men is not bad, right? Wabi snorted coldly. That's all. If you had not interfered just now, he would not only have 2 broken ribs. Gu Mingming thought to herself, yes, if I had not interfered just now, there would be a bloody gash on your chest. You don't want the snake gallbladder anymore? These 2 people were getting anxious as they fought, and they even started to use killing moves. JSK, they really don't know their limits. But Gu Mingming did not want to use these words to agitate them. After all, Gu Mingming had only wanted them to vent their frustrations from the start. Now that the effect had been achieved, why should she cause more trouble for them? Hence, Gu Mingming clicked her tongue. Would it kill you to praise me? But Wabi was unyielding. Bad taste is bad. I'm not like those cowards who have been bewitched by you. You want me to flatter you against my will? Maybe in another 100 years. Gu Mingming chuckled and covered her mouth as she stared at Wabi. It was only until Wabi was starting to get goosebumps that she pointed at the back of her neck and said, Don't forget, Snake is also my man. Although she did not mate in the beast world, but looking at Snake's attitude in the modern world, she probably could not escape from that time and space, so strictly speaking, this could not be considered a lie. Wabi choked and his face turned red. He was speechless for a long time before he finally said, You have good taste. Gu Mingming laughed out loud. Oh, 100 years is so short. It's like a snap of the fingers. Wabi died at the age of 800. The next morning the group prepared to set off. There was nothing much to pack and they only brought along 2 new high-quality furs that Leah had brought back from hunting yesterday, to be used as a cushion for Gu Mingming. Walking out of the wishing room, Gu Mingming looked up and chuckled. She exhaled and said, I finally got rid of my little tail. Wabi chuckled. So this was your intention when you made me fight with Elvis yesterday. Gu Mingming smiled without saying a word, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. Chapter 756. Yesterday the place they were at was a nest of stray beasts. With Elvis and Wabi and their team, they were naturally not afraid of the stray beasts. And the majority of the stray beasts were crazily seeking battle and attacking in a suicidal manner. They did not care at all about the difference in power between themselves and their opponents. All they wanted was a bloody battle and a release. Gu Mingming naturally could not care less if they wanted to court death. But she would not be happy if they dirted her eyes. So she sent Leah to hunt and the little snake to protect him. She called Ian to sit beside her and let Elvis and Wabi fight. She had thought that the battle between the two fifth-level beasts would be enough to intimidate the stray beasts. She did not expect them to become even more excited and eager to fight. Gu Mingming had no choice but to unleash her Beast King aura. It looked like she was suppressing Elvis and Wabi, but in reality she was intimidating those stray beasts who were hiding in the dark. They were bloodthirsty and thirsted for killing and death. But deep in their bones, they were still dominated by the fear of a Beast King-level aura. So none of them dared to make a move yesterday. Instead, they quietly followed behind them until Gu Mingming and the rest left their territory before quietly turning back. Subduing the enemy without bloodshed. That is the best strategy. Gu Mingming said nonchalantly. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and did not say a word. But he did not look too well, probably because he had not fully recovered from yesterday's injuries. No one took this little episode to heart and just continued on their way to the sea. The nearer they got to the sea, the wetter the air and the more energetic Wabi became. Finally, after walking for close to 20 days, they finally met up with Fei Rui. Gu Mingming turned around and kissed Elvis and Leah on their cheeks. I will go into the sea with this fellow to check out the situation. I will be back before the sky turns dark. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and kissed her again and again. He reminded her worriedly. Don't force yourself just because you are a beast king. The sea is not a place for you to unleash your full power. Protect yourself first and don't leave Wabi's side. Understand? Gu Mingming laughed softly. Don't worry. This fellow is even more afraid of me getting hurt than myself. He will definitely keep a close eye on me. Moreover, Gu Mingming pointed towards the sky and smiled mysteriously saying, I have someone up there. Elvis and Leah followed her finger and looked up at the sky. Suddenly they laughed and said, but didn't he say that we can't investigate the matters of the beast world? Gu Mingming shrugged her shoulders and said, the principle is not to interfere with the matters of the beast world, but there's no rule that says I can't cheat for my own daughter. In any case, I'm a second-generation immortal now. Even if I'm a fox borrowing the tiger's might, I should at least be arrogant a few times, right? Don't worry, my lonely old man who loves watching TV series will take care of me. Elvis and Leah were doubtful but they did not say much. Elvis looked at Wabi and said in an unusually serious tone, help me take care of Xiao Meng. I will definitely return this favor in the future. But Wabi snorted coldly and said disdainfully, your face is not enough to order me around. I am giving face to the one behind her neck. Elvis did not argue with Wabi and just said sincerely, no matter what, I am counting on you to take care of Xiao Meng. Gu Mingming hugged Elvis and Lee's neck and kissed them again. Then she hugged Fei Rui and walked towards the sea. As she walked she shouted, let's go little shit. Digression. Chapter 757. After Gu Mingming, Fei Rui and Wabi disappeared into the sea, Leah and Elvis exchanged a look. Leah did not ask anything and Elvis did not say anything either. On the other side, Gu Mingming didn't feel any shortness of breath after entering the bottom of the sea. The kiss of the beast deity was a good item. Perhaps this was a cheat that the beast deity had given his messenger? After entering the sea, Fei Rui and Wabi kept staring at Gu Mingming, as if worried that she would feel uncomfortable in the seawater. Then they realized that Gu Mingming was like a joyful weight diving into the depths of the sea. They were filled with curiosity towards the brightly colored undeveloped fishes and even broke off 2 pieces of coral to stick on their heads, asking Fei Rui if she looked like a little dragon man. After Fei Rui entered the water, he transformed into a fish tail and his upper body was naked. In his human form, he looked soft and cute, but in his half-beast form, he gave off the vibe of a semi-mature male god. He had the vibe of a semi-mature male god in college. No high school who knew how to play basketball, play guitar and ride a bicycle to and from school in a white shirt and jeans. Yes, in high school, no older. If she only looked at his face she would say he was in junior high school. But this figure, even if a junior high school boy stayed in the gym every day he still wouldn't be able to develop such well-defined muscles. Gu Mingming's demonic claws reached towards Fei Rui's fishtail and she smiled slyly. Can I touch it? Before Fei Rui could reply, Gu Mingming's claws were already on him. Wow! It was the tail of the legendary mermaid. The scales were bright and neat, reflecting the sunlight filtered by the sea, suffused with a gorgeous and gentle halo. Speaking of flaws, why was it a male? Her breasts are also too flat, affecting her beauty. Poor review. Although Gu Mingming only touched him once, when she looked up, she saw that Fei Rui's face was already as red as a monkey's butt. She instantly felt a sense of guilt, as if she had accidentally harmed the flower of her country. But she was really just curious. She did not know that the sensitive spot of a fish was its tail. Retracting her numb hand, Gu Mingming laughed dryly. I won't touch any more. Let's go. Aren't you in a hurry to save your sister? Thinking of his little sister, Fei Rui's face darkened. He nodded and swam forward. After swimming for a while, he turned back and realized that Gu Mingming had been left far behind. He had already slowed down, but she still couldn't catch up. Her swimming posture was so strange. Although it looked good, wasn't it too slow? Gu Mingming looked at Fei Rui's confused face and sighed silently in her heart. She helplessly hooked her arms around Wabiai's neck and smiled. Brother, give me a lift. On what basis? Wabiai glared at Gu Mingming coldly. Gu Mingming turned her head and revealed the mark on the back of her neck. Is this enough? Wabiai gritted his teeth. He tucked Gu Mingming under his armpit with one hand and carried Gu Mingming like he was carrying luggage. He chased after Fei Rui in his half-beast form without saying a word. To be honest, the speed at which the fish and the snake moved in the water was really F**king ridiculous. It was like sitting on the underwater version of a roller coaster, and it was the version without the safety belt. It was really F**king exciting. Chapter 758. Gu Mingming gestured for Wabiai to release her. Then, with the aura of a messenger of the beast deity, she imitated that lonely old man who loved to watch television series and smiled kindly. Hello everyone, I am the messenger of the beast deity, Gu Mingming. Nice to meet you all. There was a wave of whispers in a language that Gu Mingming could not understand. Then one of the mermaids transformed into a half-beast form and tried to get closer. But he maintained a safe distance. Are you really the messenger of the beast deity? Gu Mingming chuckled. Have you ever seen a female non-sea tribe other than the messenger of the beast deity breathe and move freely in the ocean at this depth? The mermaid thought about it and felt that Gu Mingming's words made sense. But he was obviously very afraid of Wabiai behind Gu Mingming. He pursed his lips and asked carefully, Then is he your partner? Gu Mingming shook her head. No, he is my friend. The mermaid seemed very uneasy. He tugged at Fei Rui's arm. Your Highness, that seems to be a snake beast. We cannot afford to offend him. Let him leave quickly. Fei Rui shook his head. No, I need his power to save my sister. The mermaid said, Are you going to disregard your entire tribe for your sister? We have already been chased out of our home by the giant fish beasts. If we continue to cause trouble, the next time the giant fish beasts will kill us all. Fei Rui held his head high. The great messenger will protect us. The mermaid said, But the great messenger will not stay in the ocean forever. What will we do after she leaves? When they come back for revenge, who will protect us? Fei Rui bit his lower lip. He could not answer the mermaid's question. The giant fish tribe was known as the overlords of the ocean. The mermaids were no match for them. But once Gu Mingming left and the giant fish beast returned, he would still be unable to protect his tribe members or his sister. So he wanted to mate with Gu Mingming. He wanted to use the identity of the messenger's partner to intimidate the giant fish beasts. This way, as long as he was alive, the giant fish beasts would not dare to bully his tribe members. Gu Mingming shook her head at Fei Rui's aggrieved look, which looked like he was about to cry. He was too weak. If he could be forced into such a state by his own tribesmen, what would he do when facing the giant fish beasts? She didn't want to interfere at first, but Fei Rui kept glancing at her. Unable to resist the pleading look in his eyes, Gu Mingming sighed and asked, Has that Dora appeared yet? Fei Rui's expression changed. Fei Rui shook his head and said, No, there's no news at all. Gu Mingming frowned. That shouldn't be the case. The messenger of the beast deity's promise sounded quite valuable. Why didn't Dora take the bait? If she was a pure and innocent child without any greed, she would not have stolen the giant fish clan's treasures. Could it be that he was already dead? Or perhaps, Fei Rui, do you know what exactly is the treasure of the giant fish clan? Gu Mingming could vaguely smell a conspiracy. Moreover, it was a familiar formula and a familiar smell. Fei Rui shook his head. I don't know. We don't have much contact with the giant fish clan. The corners of Gu Mingming's lips curled up. She chuckled and continued asking, Then how did the giant fish clan determine that your sister stole their treasures? Chapter 759. Gu Mingming patted his shoulder. If you want to save your sister, you have to tell me everything. If you hide anything, I may not be able to help you. Fei Rui sighed. His eyes that were as bright as the stars seemed to be covered by dark clouds, losing their luster. His brows furrowed as he said with guilt and heartache, "The leader of the giant fish tribe, Carter, led a group of tribesmen and charged into our tribe. They captured my sister and said that Dora had personally admitted that their tribe's treasure was in my sister's hands. No matter how we tried to explain, we couldn't beat them. We could only watch helplessly as they snatched my sister away." Gu Mingming's smile widened. She poked Fei Rui's head and asked, "Then what about the territory being snatched away?" Fei Rui's lips curled downwards, looking like he was trying hard to hold it in. With a hint of youthful stubbornness, he said, "Because I kept asking Carter to return my sister. He found me annoying and challenged me. He said that if I won he would return my sister to me. But if I lost, I would have to give him the territory of the mermaid tribe. I clearly knew that I was no match for him, but I still agreed. Because of my stupidity and recklessness, I implicated my tribesmen and my sister." Gu Mingming patted Fei Rui's shoulder and comforted him. "Oh, you can do that. Alright, let's not wait for that Dora anymore. Let's go find Carter." Fei Rui looked up at Gu Mingming in confusion. Gu Mingming smiled. "Can't we challenge him? I will help you beat him up and win back my sister and the territory." Fei Rui stared at Gu Mingming in a daze. Can I?" Gu Mingming smiled. "Why not?" Fei Rui hesitated. He knew that the consequences would be the same as the mermaid beast's worries. Once Gu Mingming left, the giant fish beast would still attack them in revenge and they would not be able to withstand it. But even so, he was desperate to save his sister. Just this once. Just one last time of recklessness. He felt that if it was Gu Mingming, she might be trustworthy. Nodding, Fei Rui ignored his tribesman's objections. He grabbed Gu Mingming's hand and flew off like an arrow. Wabiai clicked his tongue impatiently behind her, but still followed after her. The people of the mermaid tribe seemed to be afraid of Carter. None of them dared to follow him. They just quietly returned to the depths of the ocean. Other than a string of sighing bubbles, it was as if nothing had happened. The original territory of the mermaids was a large coral sea. The living corals were soft and tender, moving with the flow of the water. They were full of vitality and had an indescribable sense of tranquil beauty. Many nameless aquatic plants were evenly distributed and intertwined with the corals, forming a mirage in the sea. It looked a bit like the East Ocean Dragon Palace. A few giant fish beasts were wandering around the edge of the territory. They seemed to be guarding the gate. The moment he saw Fei Rui, he turned into his half-beast form and mocked him with disdain. "Weakling, are you looking for trouble again? You've already lost your territory. What other chips do you have to challenge our patriarch?" Fei Rui clenched his fists tightly and bit his lower lip, unable to speak. Gu Mingming took 2 steps forward and said with a smile, "Go, call Carter out for me." The giant fish beast sized Gu Mingming up with a dazed expression. Chapter 760. Wabiai took 2 steps forward and narrowed his eyes. "I asked you to call for help. Are you deaf? If you look again, I will gouge your eyes out." Snake beast. The guard from the giant fish tribe was clearly shocked. He instantly jumped back a few meters and looked at Wabiai warily. He seemed to be quite frightened. Gu Mingming tilted her head and asked Wabiai, "Why are they so afraid of you? Have you done any harm here before?" Wabiai snorted coldly. "Not me, it's him." With that, he tapped the back of Gu Mingming's neck. Gu Mingming thought hard. Snake had indeed been to the bottom of the sea before. But it seemed like he had only come to find some seafood to improve his diet when he was bored. It seemed like he had not harmed anyone, right? Wait a minute. What did he eat back then? Gu Mingming suddenly felt a chill down her spine. She shook her head and finally understood why the ocean tribe was so afraid of snakes. Sighing in exasperation, she grinned at the giant fish tribe who had fled in fear. Clearly, this fellow had obediently gone to report. Chuckling, she said in exasperation, "See, shouldn't you have been so obedient earlier? Why must you let our little shit throw a tantrum? TSK cheap bastard." Gu Mingming. Wabiai gritted his teeth and roared her name word by word. Gu Mingming smiled nonchalantly. "Why are you glaring at me? I'm not afraid of you." Wabiai was infuriated. He grabbed Gu Mingming's shoulders and turned her around. Then he said to the mark on the back of her neck, "Snake, hurry and take her away." Then Wabiai was stunned. There was actually poison on his hands. He had long developed immunity to this poison. After all, he had been poisoned for over 800 years. Although the poison was quickly diluted by the seawater, he could still recognize it. It was Snake's poison. Staring at the mark on the back of Gu Mingming's neck, he was more and more convinced of what Gu Mingming had said previously. Snake was in her body. She was the one who lied to him. Snake was here, he must be here. This realization made Wabiai a little crazy. He grabbed Gu Mingming's shoulders and shook her violently. Snake, you are here, aren't you? Come out, let's fight. Gu Mingming was about to vomit from Wabiai's shaking. Actually, it was just because Wabiai was too fierce to her just now that triggered Snake's protection mark. It was not Snake's soul that was angry, but it was useless for her to say anything now. Shaking her shoulders, Gu Mingming turned to look at Wabiai. Diske, don't get touchy. Wabiai was taken aback for 2 seconds before he continued shaking Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming was really on the verge of vomiting from his shaking. Unable to tolerate it any longer, she slapped Wabiai far away. This scene happened to be seen clearly by Carter, who had just been called out from the tribe. There was no other male snake beast at the peak of level 5 in this world. How strong was it? Perhaps, even if they had never met, a single glare from him would be enough to make her heart tremble. A man like this was sent flying by a smaller female? Chapter 761. Carter's shock at Gu Mingming's slap was shattered by Fei Rue's appearance. The moment he saw Fei Rue, Carter's gaze was filled with disdain and arrogance. He smirked and said in an arrogant tone, "If you are so capable, snatch it back." Gu Mingming patted Fei Rue, who was clearly afraid but still wanted to charge forward. She comforted him with a smile. Fei Rue was a good child. Even though his thoughts were not mature enough and he was not powerful enough, just the fact that he stood in front of Gu Mingming to protect her even though he was clearly afraid was enough to make Gu Mingming willingly help him. Not because of the kiss of the ocean or any other reason, but because Gu Mingming felt that Fei Rue was a good person. Fei Rue pursed his lips into a straight line. He was hesitant but eventually calmed down. On one hand he believed in Gu Mingming's abilities, but on the other hand he was worried that Gu Mingming would be at a disadvantage. After all, she was a female. With that thought in mind, he stared unblinkingly at Gu Mingming. Every cell in his body was on guard against Carter, ready to use himself as a meat shield to protect Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming chuckled at how nervous he was and didn't say anything. She took 2 steps forward and looked at Carter. He had a strong physique and a resolute face. If he held a fork in his hand, he would be the most handsome version of the sea god Poseidon. His temperament was similar to Elvis from a certain point of view. His entire body was filled with signs that said, "Strangers do not come near," and the way he looked at her was very familiar to Gu Mingming, because Elvis and Leah always had this cold and guarded look when they looked at someone other than Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming placed her hands behind her back and looked up at Carter. Her small body contained a lot of energy. The nobility that Snake had accumulated over thousands of years was naturally not something someone like Carter could compare to. Let's put it this way, if Gu Mingming really wanted to act cool, no one in the entire beast world could do it better than her unless Snake himself came back to life. She chuckled with a king's disdain. She opened her mouth and said slowly and evenly, "Now the ocean tribes are no longer under the beast deity's control?" Carter was taken aback and frowned as if he didn't understand what she meant. Wabiai, who had been sent flying by Gu Mingming, had already stood back up. He had to play his role well in front of outsiders and not embarrass that person. Hence, Wabiai stared coldly at Carter, not saying a single word. Meanwhile, Fei Rue was standing on the other side of Gu Mingming. Although he was a little timid, he still said, "This is the messenger of the beast deity, Carter. No matter how arrogant you are, there should be a limit." Messenger of the beast deity? Carter's eyes darkened and his jaw muscles bulged, as if he was gritting his teeth and weighing something. Clenching his fists tightly by his sides, he remained silent for a moment before lowering his head and bowing respectfully. "Greetings, messenger of the beast deity." Gu Mingming chuckled. She rested one hand on Fei Rue's arm and leaned against Wabiai's shoulder, looking like an indecent empress dowager. She chuckled and said, "Let's skip the formalities. I am here to see, what is your sister's name again?" Fei Rue whispered into Gu Mingming's ear, "Melinda?" Gu Mingming said, "Yeah, right. I'm here to see Melinda. Leader Carter, please make things convenient for me." Chapter 762. As they brushed shoulders, Wabiai bumped into him. Carter stumbled awkwardly but could not do anything to Wabiai. He could only clench his fists and follow behind Gu Mingming silently. This was originally the territory of the mermaid tribe, so Fei Rue was very familiar with the place and easily found his younger sister's original residence. Pink corals formed a circle around a huge open shell. The shell was filled with fresh seaweed, stacked neatly on top of one another. A pillow made from giant clams was placed at one end of the large shell. Beside it was some kind of shellfish containing food. Gu Mingming had never seen it before, so it must be some kind of fruit from the bottom of the sea? A young girl was sitting on the ground, her upper body sprawled on the seaweed on the shell bed. She buried her face in her arms and refused to look up. Her blonde hair was slightly curled. It was not exaggerated, but it was very classy. Gu Mingming would not normally say that blonde girls were classy. Even if it was a high-end blonde goddess from European and American movies, she would at most say that they had an aura. Gu Mingming felt that only black-haired Chinese girls were worthy of the term classy. But for some reason, just by looking at her back, Gu Mingming felt that a blonde girl was classy for the first time. She lay there motionlessly, looking like an injured swan in a ballet. There was a faint sense of sadness and helplessness, but also stubbornness and unwillingness to give in. Gu Mingming had not even seen her face, but her heart ached for this girl. Melinda. Fei Rui called out agitatedly. The girl's back froze for a moment before she suddenly turned around. Her eyes, which were almost identical to Fei Rui's, were misty, but her lips were curved into a joyful smile. Brother. The girl stood up abruptly. Ignoring the numbness in her legs, she ran towards Fei Rui in a sorry state. Fei Rui naturally did the same. He rushed forward and hugged his sister tightly in his arms, comforting her gently and patiently. Gu Mingming glanced at Carter. Her eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Enduring? Sadness? Helplessness? Perhaps it was pain, but there was no anger. This was not the look one should have when looking at a criminal. Gu Mingming was no stranger to this look. Elvis and Leah had the same look when looking at her. You're not satisfied? Gu Mingming stood beside Carter and asked. Carter gritted his teeth and said, unless the great emissary stays at the bottom of the sea to protect the mermaid clan, otherwise. You're still going to use the excuse of the clan treasure being stolen to continue imprisoning the girl? Glancing sideways, Gu Mingming accepted the shock in Carter's eyes calmly. This fellow must have thought that he had acted very well and no one would know the truth. Gu Mingming smiled like an expert, then said lightly, what you did would only push her to the opposite side of you. If in her eyes you will always be the enemy. Carter's eyes widened at Gu Mingming's words. He didn't even have such a reaction when he saw Wabi. Chapter 763. Fei Rui finally managed to coax the crying Melinda. Then he held her little hand and slowly walked over to Gu Mingming. He looked at Gu Mingming anxiously. Great messenger, can we bring my sister away? Gu Mingming tilted her head. I just came in to take a look. I will leave after making sure your sister is fine. You have to ask Carter whether you can bring her away. Gu Mingming's words stunned not only Fei Rui and Melinda, but even Carter. 3 pairs of eyes widened in shock. They stared at Gu Mingming in confusion. Gu Mingming shrugged. Of course, no one can stop me even if I were to openly rob her today. But, do you want Melinda to be labeled as a thief forever? Think carefully. If she leaves with me today, it would be equivalent to confirming her crime of stealing someone else's things. She would not be able to clear her name again in the future. Gu Mingming shrugged nonchalantly and said, well, it's easier for me to just bring her away directly. After all, our deal is just to help you save your sister. It doesn't include clearing her name, and it also doesn't include whether she will be captured again after I leave. Fei Rui was in a dilemma again. He bit his lower lip. It's all right. I can bring my sister to another part of the ocean and start afresh. Far away from here, no one will recognize us and no one will be able to find us. When he mentioned leaving, Carter's pupils shrank. The veins on his fists were popping. He was clearly furious. Gu Mingming tugged at him and shook her head gently. Then her gaze landed on Melinda's face. She smiled gently. Melinda fulfilled all of Gu Mingming's fantasies of being a mermaid. She was not just a backview killer. Even Gu Mingming, who had been brainwashed by Elvis and Leah to think that she was the most beautiful woman in the world, felt a sense of inferiority in front of Melinda. Long years at the bottom of the sea had caused her skin to be smooth and fair. Her body, which had been honed by swimming, flowed smoothly like water. There was not a single bit of excess fat on her body. She was simply the embodiment of perfection. Her face was so pure that people couldn't bear to say a harsh word in front of her. She was supposed to be a princess that was held in the palm of the hand. Melinda had definitely refreshed Gu Mingming's understanding of females in the beast world. She was the most beautiful female Gu Mingming had ever seen in the beast world. At this moment, Marlene bit her lower lip and hesitated for a long time. But she still raised her head with determination and looked at Gu Mingming. No, I'm not leaving. I didn't steal anything, so why should I run away? Gu Mingming smiled softly. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Carter had also finally heaved a sigh of relief, no longer suffocating as if someone was strangling him. Gu Mingming walked in front of Fei Rue and patted his shoulder. Looking into his sparkling eyes, she comforted him. I will stay by the seaside for a while and help Melinda settle the matter of the theft. I will let her live openly at the place she likes. Do you want to believe me for once? But Fei Rue's gaze turned towards Carter. It was filled with wariness and hostility. Gu Mingming reached out without hesitation and sent Carter flying with a slap. Then she dusted her hands. With me around, I'll see who dares to bully my little mermaid. Chapter 764. By the time they returned to the shore, the moon was already shining brightly. Leah sat by the fire and stirred the food in the pot, his eyes constantly drifting to the surface of the sea. It wasn't until he saw that familiar figure running in front of him that his heart finally calmed down. Elvis removed the beast's skin that had been roasting by the fire and wrapped it around Gu Mingming. He then glared coldly at Fei Rue back into the sea. He watched as Wabi knowingly swam into the forest in search of food. There was no one else by the shore, so he quickly helped Gu Mingming change into a clean set of clothes to prevent her from catching a cold. As Gu Mingming changed, she reached out her hand for food. She was really hungry. Although it was either Fei Rue or Wabi who pulled her along the entire journey, the distance she had swum today was definitely enough for her to complete a triathlon. She had used up a lot of her energy. Elvis was always in a good mood when he saw her eat more. So he asked as he fed her, "How did the matter go? Did the leader of the giant fish tribe make things difficult for you?" Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "The plot is rather melodramatic. It's just like the deep-sea version of, the president is above, I'm below, adhering to the light-hearted plot of torturing you because I love you. I really wonder if the brains of you males are filled with laundry detergent?" Leah and Elvis were at a loss. They had no idea what laundry detergent was, but from her tone, it was probably not a compliment. But they caught on to something. Torturing you because I love you? So, not only did Gu Mingming attract a love rival for them in the sea today, she had also been wronged and tormented. Gu Mingming could tell from their expressions that they had misunderstood again. Raising her hand, Gu Mingming stopped herself in time. "Stop, don't let your thoughts run wild. He doesn't like me. I am at most a matchmaker in this matter." "Mm?" Elvis's face darkened as he asked in a monosyllabic voice. Gu Mingming took another bite of meat. Before she swallowed, she smiled and tilted her head to point at the surface of the sea with her chin. "There, the main character is here. If you are curious, just ask him directly." Carter had originally come to ask Gu Mingming why she was helping him, and also what to do next. But seeing that there were others around, he could not bring himself to do it. She wanted to go back the way she came, but when she saw how Gu Mingming, Elvis and Leah were interacting, she felt very envious. Momentarily at a loss, she walked closer. Now that he had been singled out by Gu Mingming, it was too late for him to retreat. He might as well transform into his human form and walk over. Elvis handed Gu Mingming over to Leah before standing up and walking towards Carter. With a cold expression he asked, "What did you do to Xiaomeng?" Carter had long seen Elvis's mark on Gu Mingming's collarbone, so he naturally knew about their relationship. He pursed his lips and said, "I was slapped by the great messenger, does that count?" Without saying a word, Elvis threw a punch at Carter's face. Carter fell to the ground, seeing stars. He was considered a tyrant in the sea, but his abilities were limited on land. Moreover, he was only a third-level beast, so a punch from the fifth-level Elvis was enough to make him suffer. Elvis's voice was cold and filled with anger. "Xiaomeng never hits people for no reason. If she hits you, it must be because you did something that deserves to be hit." Carter looked at Elvis and did not open his mouth. On one hand he had a deep-rooted fear towards the strong, and on the other hand he had a favor to ask of Gu Mingming. He was willing to pay such a price. Digression, author Xiaomeng. "Son, why did you hit people for no reason without asking clearly?" Elvis, "Xiaomeng thinks that he deserves to be hit. That is the most sufficient reason for me to hit him. I don't need anything else." Author Xiaomeng, "Both of you have violent tendencies. Carter is innocent." Elvis, "Innocent? Do you know how many joints in Xiaomeng's body needed to move to complete that slap? My Xiaomeng had to go through so much trouble, yet he is innocent." Chapter 765. Gu Mingming didn't stop Elvis from beating Carter up. She just ate with gusto. When she was almost done, she called out, "Hubby, wash the pot." Elvis left Carter behind and returned to Gu Mingming's side. He kissed her oily lips, then carried the new stone pot Leah had made to the beach to wash it. Carter then climbed up from the ground pathetically and walked to Gu Mingming's side. He bowed and greeted, "Great messenger." Gu Mingming acted as if she couldn't see the wounds all over his body. Sit down. Tell me your story. Carter was taken aback. He had thought that since Gu Mingming had been sent by Fei Rui, she would definitely detest him as much as Fei Rui did. Although she had not displayed any hostility at the bottom of the sea and had even secretly helped him keep Melinda behind, he still could not figure out what this great messenger was thinking. Moreover, he thought that Gu Mingming would at least ask him why he was looking for her. But she asked him to tell her his story? He came here with a stomach full of questions, not to tell a story. Gu Mingming smacked her lips, as if she was still savoring the taste of that last mouthful of meat. After swallowing her saliva in satisfaction, Gu Mingming spoke first. I will stay here for 10 days. If you can't settle Melinda in 10 days, I will leave with the siblings. Great messenger. Carter growled. Leah laughed coldly as he protected Gu Mingming in his arms. His slanted eyes were filled with disdain and provocation as he stared at Carter. His tone was calm but colder than the seawater under the moonlight. Killing you here might be a simpler and more violent method. How long has it been since I last ate fish? Thinking about it, I'm really hungry. They were both third-level beasts, but they were on land. Carter couldn't possibly defeat Leah. If he wanted to return to the sea, Elvis was guarding the beach and wouldn't give him a chance to enter the sea. Moreover, he was here to ask questions and not to cause trouble. Carter bent his knees and knelt in front of Gu Mingming. He lowered his head. Great messenger, please help me. Tell me how to make Melinda accept me. Gu Mingming chuckled and leaned into Lee's arms. I want you to sit down, not kneel. If I don't want to help you, it's useless for you to kneel or kowtow. If I want to help you, I won't trample on your dignity, understand? Carter nodded, not fully understanding. Then he sat up according to Gu Mingming's instructions. He stared at Gu Mingming with sparkling eyes, as if he was hoping to see a flower blossoming on her face and pluck it for Melinda to win her heart. Gu Mingming sighed and said, Even if I want to give you ideas, I have to first know what is going on. Tell me your story with Melinda, and I'll help you think of a way. Carter nodded. He was obviously a hardliner, but at this moment, when he thought of his sweetheart, a trace of gentleness and shyness appeared on his face. There was a territorial dispute between clans and I was heavily injured. I almost lost my life. I was saved by Melinda, who was out playing. With just one look, I fell in love with her. After I recovered, I returned to the giant fish tribe. The battle was still going on and I couldn't leave my people behind. But when the battle ended and I went to find her, she didn't recognize me. She rejected me, resisted me, avoided me. She was afraid of me. Out of topic. Chapter 766. She is the most beautiful female in the world. I swear I will cherish her, protect her and give her the best. But, she was so nice to me when I was injured. Why did she abandon me after I recovered? I did not do anything to hurt her. Why is she afraid of me? Even you, the great messenger, can see through my feelings for her. Why does she not know? I will never hurt her. Carter felt helpless and helpless. He lowered his head and sighed, unable to say anything else. Gu Mingming chuckled. You snatched the mermaid tribe's territory and forced her tribesmen to have nowhere to go. You humiliated her brother time and time again, forcing him to come all the way to St. Nazaire to ask for my help to save him. Do you think all these are not hurt? Carter looked up in confusion. I snatched the mermaid tribe's territory because she did not like where the giant fish tribe lived. She said she wanted to go home, so I snatched her home back for her. Gu Mingming could not control herself and laughed. Her face was filled with the word convinced. His way of thinking was really strange. How did he come up with such a solution? Gu Mingming really felt that gender theory and horoscopes were all a fantasy. How did the way of thinking between the sexes become so different? And Fei Rui, he is always the one challenging me. I have never taken the initiative to find trouble with him. It is not my fault that he could not beat me. Gu Mingming face-bombed. Young man, your way of thinking is called destined to be alone. Do you understand? Carter shook his head honestly. Gu Mingming explained kindly. It means destined to be alone for life. Carter panicked. What did I do wrong? Gu Mingming suddenly wanted to laugh. It was like a child who handed in a blank paper and asked his teacher, Teacher, what do you think I did wrong? What can I improve on? The teacher's reply was, You did wrong because you did not even write your name. Gu Mingming patted Li's chest. Tell him where he did wrong. I am afraid I will drown him with my spit. Leah suddenly felt that Carter was not so annoying. After all, he was blind. A handicapped fish was quite pitiful. Why did he say that he was blind? Of course, It was because he said that Melinda was the most beautiful female in the world. What a joke, the most beautiful female in the world was Gu Mengmeng in his arms, alright? If he couldn't even tell, what else could he be other than blind? Leah still had some compassion for the handicapped. After all, a witch doctor was also a kind of angel in white. It was his duty to care for the wounded. Of course, the prerequisite was that this patient did not covet his Meng. Clearing his throat, Leah placed his large tail into Gu Mengmeng's arms, allowing her to play with it. Squinting his eyes, Leah said, "With your intellect, you can't have thought of framing her for stealing, right? Tell me, who is the mastermind behind this?" Chapter 767. Gu Mengmeng and Leah looked at each other and smiled, understanding each other. Leah continued, "The female said she wanted to go home and you snatched her territory, this idea?" Carter replied with a blank expression, "Oh, this was my own idea." Leah chuckled, "No one reminded you?" Carter thought for a moment, then replied, "Dora gave me a suggestion." Leah chuckled, then shook his head and sighed, ignoring Carter. He hooked Gu Mengmeng's chin and said affectionately, "Mengmeng, promise me don't choose partners from the ocean tribes. They are so stupid, it will lower the average IQ of our family." Gu Mengmeng nodded in agreement. "Don't worry, I am very repulsed by males who don't know how to judge a whore." Elvis had already finished washing the pot and placed it beside a big tree. He then shook off the water on his hands and carried Gu Mengmeng up. Elvis had heard their entire conversation. He could still coexist peacefully with a male who had no ulterior motives towards Gu Mengmeng. He kissed Gu Mengmeng's little face, then said, "Take the kiss of the ocean and let's go. He is hopeless, don't waste time." Carter was really dumbfounded by Gu Mengmeng's family of three. He couldn't get a word in or understand what they were saying until Elvis said he was not going to care about him. Then he snapped out of his trance and looked at Gu Mengmeng anxiously. "Great messenger, what did I do wrong? Please tell me, I am willing to change. For Melinda, I can change anything." Gu Mengmeng chuckled, "Do you know what your biggest mistake is?" Carter shook his head. Everything he did was to keep Melinda by his side. He didn't feel that he had done anything wrong. Gu Mengmeng, indeed, a person with terminal male cancer will never know that he is beyond cure. Carter was taken aback. He looked down at his own body and frowned. "I am going to die? So I can't give her happiness, right?" Gu Mengmeng thought that communicating with Snake was already the limit of the generation gap, but now it seemed like she was wrong. In the beast world, there was only more difficult communication, not the most difficult. Something like a generation gap, haha, had no limits. Leah chuckled. "Not being able to make the female you like happy is your biggest mistake." Carter nodded in agreement and said, "I know it's my fault. But I don't know how to change. That's why I'm here to consult Lord Emissary." Leah shook his head and said, "Listening to females other than the ones you like is the second mistake you made." Carter's expression was stiff and somewhat wooden. Listening to Lee's words was like listening to a book from heaven. His mouth was slightly agape and his eyes were blank as he looked at Leah, not understanding what was going on. Leah pointed at Elvis and then at himself. "My Mengmeng liked me first, but he is Mengmeng's first partner. Do you know why?" Kite thought for a moment and said, "Because he's a level 5 orc. You can't beat him." Leah snickered. "You are really outstanding in your stupidity. How could he have been at the 5th level before mating?" Kite slapped his forehead as he recalled the matter of the level 3 boundary. Chapter 768. "I thought I was doing it for her own good, so she would definitely forgive me after knowing the truth. I was mentally prepared to accept all the punishments. I thought I was prepared." Leah recalled those days when he was not forgiven. Gu Mengmeng kept calling him her ex-boyfriend in the cave, asking him to maintain his composure and not pester her. Every word was like a sharp claw, tearing at his heart to this day. This pain constantly reminded him not to do anything that would upset Gu Mengmeng. He could not bear the consequences. Raising his head, he looked at Carter as if he had been through it all. Leah said slowly, "All punishments, including her tears and determination. What if the only punishment she can give you is to tell you with tears that she forgives you and doesn't hate you anymore, so that you don't need to disturb her anymore? Are you also prepared to accept it?" All these were clearly just a few words from Leah, but Carter felt as if his chest was being viciously torn apart by something. That pair of clear eyes were filled with tears. It was as if the scene of her saying goodbye was right before his eyes. In that instant he felt as if every drop of blood in his body had solidified. He froze on the spot, unable to move. Leah chuckled. "See, you are not prepared. And you can't bear it either." Carter's temples were throbbing. He was silent for a long time before he found his voice again. Like a drowning man who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw, he said in a trembling voice, "But you were forgiven in the end, didn't you?" Leah looked at the mark on Gu Mingming's ear tenderly, his eyes filled with so much joy and treasure. He reached out and caressed Gu Mingming's little earlobe, then looked at Carter with some arrogance in his long and narrow eyes, saying, "The difference between you and me is that other than Mingming, I will not listen to any other females. Everything I did wrong was all my own idea while you listened to Dora and hurt Melinda. This is the fundamental difference. Understand? I just don't want Melinda to leave me." Carter was scared witless by Lee's words. There was nothing going on between him and Dora, but why did he feel so guilty after hearing Lee's words? Lee's face was filled with disdain as he sneered. "Oh, your desires are above her happiness, seems like you don't like her that much." "No, it's not like that." Kite wanted to explain, but he didn't know what to say. Gu Mingming smiled. This Carter was still too young to compete with Leah in terms of wits. Waving his hand, he said, "Carter, you must first be clear about what you want. Do you want to keep Melinda by your side, or do you want her to like you, fall in love with you, and accept you?" Kite was at a loss and asked, "Is there a difference?" Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "Of course there is. There is a huge difference between voluntary and involuntary. The former represents happiness, while the latter represents torture." "How can there be no difference?" Carter said without hesitation, "I want her to be happy." Gu Mingming nodded and said, "The first step is to clear her name. Make up for the mistakes you've made in the past, only then will you have the qualifications to stand in front of her and pursue her again." Carter nodded and said, "All right, I will now go back and announce that Melinda never stole anything." "Never." Gu Mingming held her forehead as she leaned on Elvis's shoulder and looked at Leah, giving him a pleading look. Chapter 769. Leah brought Carter to one side and guided him. Gu Mingming could not bear to continue listening to Carter's words. He looked so smart, but why did he sound like a retard when it came to relationships? Nestled in Elvis's arms, Gu Mingming sighed. "Luckily I met you then, or else I would have been angered to death." Elvis's eyes were filled with indulgence and love. He kissed Gu Mingming's eyes and whispered in her ear with a hoarse and reserved voice, "Silly girl, I'm the one who should rejoice." That night, Carter brought Leah to listen to his lessons. Wabi did not return and was curled up in some tree in the forest. Ian's presence was as low as ever. Meanwhile, Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and listened to her count the stars one by one. She told him interesting stories about the constellations that he did not understand. Her voice was so gentle that he could not sleep the entire night. He did not even want to miss the sound of her breathing. The next morning, Wabi brought back fresh fruits while Ian strangely brought back many bird eggs. Seeing Gu Mingming looking at him as though he was a pervert, he snorted coldly. "Even our eagle owl tribe doesn't have any descendants, how can these uncivilized dumb birds reproduce?" Gu Mingming's eyes were filled with disdain. Gu Mingming clicked her tongue and sighed at how black-bellied Ian was. His "if I don't have a good time, no one can have a good time" emphasis was too evil. But even so, Gu Mingming knew that Ian had gone to retrieve these bird eggs because Leah had instructed him in the morning. Gu Mingming was still nestled in Elvis's arms. She did not know why, but she just felt that something had happened to Elvis during the day she went to the deep sea. There was clearly nothing different, but Gu Mingming knew that Elvis was very uneasy, as if he was very attached to her. But he did not want to say, so Gu Mingming could only choose not to ask. Gu Mingming bit on the fruits Wabi had brought back and stretched her neck to wait for Leah to cook the bird eggs. The eggs were not cooked yet, but a few familiar faces came up from the sea. Fei Rui was holding Melinda's hand as he ran over. Looking at the smiles on their faces, Gu Mingming thought to herself that Carter was really efficient. He had only returned late last night and this morning, he had already cleared Melinda's name. Lord Envoy. Fei Rui and Melinda were the same. Their skin was so fair that Gu Mingming could not bear to let them bask in the sun. It was as if the sun could melt them. Meanwhile, Fei Rui and Melinda's cheeks were flushed red. Mermaids did not have sweat glands, so their skin was still dry. However, their panting clearly told Gu Mingming how much they wanted to be the first to tell this good news to her. Gu Mingming patted Fei Rui's shoulder. "Speak slowly, it's all right." Fei Rui took a deep breath. His cold, star-like eyes shone with a bright light. He was so happy that he almost cried, "My sister is free." Gu Mingming maintained a polite smile. Although this news, she had already known about it last night, she still congratulated Marlene happily. She passed one of the fruits in her hands to Marlene and said, "Here, this is for you." to celebrate your freedom. Chapter 770. Gu Mingming looked behind her. Indeed, there was a familiar head peeking over from behind the rock. It clearly wanted to stick close to her but could only watch from afar. It looked rather pitiful. You come here for a moment. Gu Mingming pointed at the head behind the rock. Carter was taken aback but still swam out from behind the rock. He transformed into his human form and went ashore. His eyes were fixed on Melinda. Naturally, he didn't miss the way Melinda shivered and hid behind Fei Rui the moment he appeared. She was still afraid of him, great messenger. Carter lowered his head and averted his gaze. He didn't want to see Melinda panicking, but he couldn't help but want to get closer to her. Gu Mingming ignored the conflict between the two. She just said to herself, "We want to eat seafood. You and Fei Rui can help me fish some." Carter nodded. Yes. Fei Rui wasn't willing to speak to Carter, but Gu Mingming was the messenger of the beast deity. If she hadn't come, Melinda would still be locked up. Although this matter had nothing to do with Gu Mingming on the surface, Fei Rui knew that if Gu Mingming had not stepped forward, Carter would not have let Melinda go no matter how much evidence they had to prove her innocence. So it was his honor to be able to do something for Gu Mingming. Although it was insignificant compared to what Gu Mingming had done for him and his sister, it still made him feel better. So even though his partner was Carter, Fei Rui didn't reject Gu Mingming's request. He stood up and swam with Carter towards the deep sea. Gu Mingming liked pretty girls, especially those who were beautiful and kind. Seeing that Melinda was holding the fruit without eating it, Gu Mingming smiled and asked, "You don't like to eat this kind of fruit?" Melinda shook her head. "I have never eaten it before." Gu Mingming turned to Wabi. "Is this a fruit that is hard to find?" Wabi pointed to the nearby forest. "There are many of them." Melinda blushed slightly. She lowered her head. "This is my first time coming ashore?" Gu Mingming grinned and held Melinda's little hand. "I am very honored to be able to accompany you on such a special day." Melinda smiled sweetly. She was a little shy and bashful. "Thank you, great messenger." Gu Mingming picked up her fruit and took a bite. Then she signaled Melinda to have a taste too. The beauty ate with great elegance. That small bite was like kissing a fruit. Looking at the half-eaten fruit in her hand, Gu Mingming suddenly started to doubt her own feminine nature. After mating for half a year, had she forgotten to maintain her image in front of Elvis and Leah? Is it really okay to eat like this? Gu Mingming thought about it and started to take small bites of the fruit. But Elvis pressed her hand down and pressed the fruit down. Then he kissed her lips and said, "I like your original appearance. Don't force yourself to learn from others." Gu Mingming blushed. She did not expect Elvis to care about such a small detail. Come to think of it, when she was pregnant with Huda and his brothers, Elvis was the one who carried them to the toilet. What kind of pathetic state had he not seen before? However, he had seen her at her worst, most disheveled and most unkempt, but he still loved her. Chapter 771. Melinda told Gu Mingming what had happened last night. It was roughly the same as what Leah had told her. Dora had voluntarily returned the giant fish clan's treasure because she was afraid of the beast deity's curse and confessed to framing Melinda for stealing it. Melinda was imprisoned by the giant fish clan as a slave. Her fate was to be used as a currency to exchange for resources with other tribes. To a female, this was not much of a punishment. After all, she was still a treasure in the hands of other tribes. After all, she was a female. But this cleared Melinda of the crime of stealing, and the giant fish clan could no longer imprison her. Moreover, as compensation for wrongly accusing her, Carter also returned all the territories of the mermaid clan that they had lost to him in a challenge. Everything returned to its original position. It seemed that everything had returned to its original point. But Carter's feelings for Melinda grew stronger every day. And Melinda's fear of Carter also grew stronger. Gu Mingming almost burst out laughing after hearing Melinda's description. The beast deity's curse? What the hell was that? So good at making things up. While Gu Mingming and Melinda were chatting, Fei Rui and Carter had also returned with seafood. When Gu Mingming saw the fish Carter had brought back, 10,000 curses ran through her mind. Yes, she said she wanted to eat seafood and fish. But there was no need for you to bring back a whale, right? Gu Mingming's jaw almost dropped to the ground as she watched Carter slowly drag the whale by its tail onto the shore. Big brother, your brain circuit is so king fast. Besides Gu Mingming, Melinda was also shocked. Although Carter had not expressed anything when he had dragged the fish onto the shore, Melinda had already inwardly thought of him as cool and cruel. Her little body trembled as she gripped Gu Mingming's hand so tightly that her fingertips turned white. Power equals charm. This was definitely a male's hallucination after his brain was caught in a door. Wabi-ai, you can eat that fish. Gu Mingming pointed at the whale Carter had brought back. Eat it in the sea. Don't let me see you eating. I'm scared. Since Gu Mingming didn't call him little shit, Wabi-ai happily walked to Carter's side and dragged the whale back into the sea without another word. Carter had no idea what was going on. But looking at Leah and Gu Mingming's disdainful expression and Melinda's fearful expression, he knew he had messed up again. He only hoped that she would see that he was very strong and could protect her. Why did it backfire? Frustrated, Kate stood on the spot, not knowing what to do. Fei Rue ignored him and sat beside Gu Mingming and Melinda. He placed a few shellfish on the ground and said, "These shellfish are very delicious, have a taste." With that said, Fei Rue crushed the shell with a kacha, and the shell immediately shattered into pieces. The flesh of the shell was still squirming, and the scene was somewhat disgusting. Gu Mingming sighed and said, "A gentleman stays away from the kitchen." Fei Rue did not understand. He tilted his head and waited for Gu Mingming's explanation. Gu Mingming looked at his clear eyes, then at the pile of crushed shellfish meat in his hand. She smiled and explained gently, "It means to scram and play at the side." Fei Rue lowered his head like a child who had done something wrong. He thought that Gu Mingming didn't like the shellfish and wanted to take it away too. Seeing his aggrieved look, Gu Mingming's heart softened. "Put it down, I will handle it." Aside from the topic, Gu Mingming, I always thought that Colin was the epitome of inexperience in love. But after meeting you I finally understand, haha, being unromantic is just child's play. Carter? What did I do wrong? Chapter 772. She got Leah to start a fire and placed a flat stone slab on top of it. She threw the shells on top to heat them up and soon they all opened up. There was nothing dirty in the original marine products. Gu Mingming used simple seasonings to marinate them before using tree resin to skewer the shellfish. She had no choice. There were no stainless steel roasting pans here. She could only eat boiled shellfish after skewering them. Boiled oysters or whatever, TSK not interested. After Gu Mingming demonstrated the first skewer, the task of cooking was handed over to Leah. Gu Mingming was more interested in the shells themselves. The nameless shells glowed with 5 different colors, giving off a rainbow-like glow under the sunlight. Gu Mingming and Melinda each took one and couldn't bear to part with it. Especially when they found a good pearl in one of the shells, the 2 females were overjoyed as if they had discovered a new continent. The pearl was also colorful like the shells, but the shape was not very good. It was not a regular pattern but a little, like a lazy goat's hairstyle. Although pearls of this quality were not considered top quality in the ocean, the 2 females were extremely rare. Gu Mingming drew the pearl left and right on Melinda's body. The size was just right to make an earring. It matched Melinda's face perfectly. She used a tree branch to draw a simple diagram for Melinda. Melinda's eyes almost popped out of her head. Perhaps only Oriton's obsession with food could compare to a girl's obsession with jewelry. The earring was finally completed. This was thanks to Fei Rue's spitting technique. He held the pearl and spat out a droplet of water from his mouth. It was as thin as an embroidery needle and accurately pierced through the spot Gu Mingming had pointed out. Gu Mingming was overjoyed. She asked for a strand of Melinda's hair to pierce through the hole and tie a dead knot. Then she skillfully weaved a flower pattern. Gu Mingming didn't know which generation's inherited memories told her that the hair of the mermaid tribe was very tough and not easily damaged. Moreover, Melinda's hair was long and of good quality. Using her hair to make an earring was the best match for her ears. Everything was prepared. The last step was to pierce Melinda's ears. Why else would it be said that one would not regret dying for beauty? In order to wear the earring, the petite little girl handed over her ear without hesitation and let Fei Rue spit a drop of water through it. Fei Rue was trembling in fear. What kind of joke was this? Even a slight frown from his precious little sister was enough to make his heart ache. Now she wanted him to attack her? No way, no way. Gu Mingming snorted. So useless. Carter, come here. Gu Mingming waved her hand. Carter walked over silently and stood beside Gu Mingming, his eyes fixed on Melinda. Gu Mingming pointed at the center of Melinda's earlobe. Can you pierce a small hole here? Carter frowned and looked at Melinda. You really want to have your ears pierced? Melinda was afraid of Carter and instinctively wanted to hide. But after looking at Gu Mingming and then at the pearl earring, she hesitated but still nodded. This was the first time Melinda had asked him to do something. No matter how reluctant he was, Carter would not disappoint her. Chapter 773. Melinda did not know why. This was the person she was most afraid of, but when she heard him say that, she felt strangely at ease. Blushing, Melinda didn't have time to think about anything else when she felt a warm breath on her ear. Instinctively, she shrank her neck to avoid it, but Carter's hand was already on her face. He gently pulled her into his embrace, and the side of her face was pressed against his chest. His heart was beating wildly. He didn't know if it was because he was worried that he had accidentally hurt her, or because she was willing to be so close to him. He only knew that when he saw her blush, his body reacted faster than his brain. He wanted to hug her. He really just wanted to hug her. Melinda did not struggle or resist. She seemed to be in a daze and allowed Carter to hug her for a long time. Fei Rui was unhappy and wanted to separate them, but was held back by Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming shook her head lightly. "Isn't it good to have another reliable person to protect her with you?" Fei Rui was stunned for a moment. He carefully observed Carter's and Melinda's expressions before slowly withdrawing his strength and turning to leave. After hugging for a long time, Carter released Melinda. It was not that he had enough, but he did not dare to ask for more. He wanted to hug her and never let go. But if he hugged her any longer, she would angrily push him away. He was prepared to be scolded by Melinda, but his careful gaze met Melinda's momentary disappointment. Maybe she liked his hug. Stunned for a moment, Carter immediately hugged Melinda back into his arms. He would hug her like this until the end of time. However, Melinda had already regained her senses from that momentary chill. She pushed Carter away and walked to Gu Mingming's side. She pursed her lips and did not say a word. She hid behind Gu Mingming with her head lowered, clearly still resisting Carter. Gu Mingming pretended not to see anything. She pulled Melinda along and chatted happily. She helped Melinda put on the pearl earrings and sighed sincerely. He pulled Melinda to the beach and asked her to look at the reflection in the water to see if she was satisfied with the result. However, Melinda's eyes subconsciously peeked at Carter through the reflection in the water. Gu Mingming pulled Melinda back and pretended to be nonchalant. "Carter, what do you think of this earring? Are you a good match for Melinda?" Carter's eyes were still on Melinda's face. Meeting her cautious and expectant gaze, Carter smiled bashfully and dotingly. "Very beautiful, very beautiful." Gu Mingming clearly saw that Melinda's face had turned red, but she refused to let it go. "Then is the earring prettier or Melinda prettier? You have to speak clearly." Kate's expression did not change. "Melinda is beautiful. She is the most beautiful female in the world. She is the essence of all things beautiful." Gu Mingming smiled and nodded, then pretended to sigh in pity. "What a pity there's only one. If only I could find another pearl that looks exactly the same to make a pair." Carter did not say a word, but Gu Mingming recognized his expression. It was the expression Elvis and Leah had every time she said something unintentionally, and Elvis and Leah secretly remembered it. She believed that even if Carter had to turn the entire ocean upside down, he would definitely find another pearl that was exactly the same for Melinda. However, he would leave the future to time. Chapter 774. After resting for 2 days, Fei Rui and Carter brought their tribesmen to fetch Gu Mingming to the Forbidden Abyss on the morning of the 3rd day. Compared to the first time they entered the sea, it was a little more extravagant this time. Gu Mingming was wrapped up in Wabiai's snake tail, feeling like an emperor leading his officials on a tour with a divine beast. Although this divine beast looked like a piece of sh*t soaked in water, but she endured it. After all, there were many fishes behind them and it looked rather intimidating. Elvis and Leah also wanted to follow but were rejected by Gu Mingming. Although the mermaid tribe's air bubble could allow them to breathe underwater, if they met with any accident and the air bubble burst, they would definitely die at that depth. Moreover, even if the air bubble was fine, the water pressure at the bottom of the sea was also a serious problem. Beasts who lived on land for a long time would be half dead just by going down. Why was Gu Mingming fine? Nonsense, she had Snake's Beast King powers and the kiss of the beast deity from her lonely father. Of course she would be fine. When they neared the so-called Forbidden Abyss, Gu Mingming finally understood why Fei Rui said the messenger of the beast deity had to come personally. It was clearly a flowing sea, but it was filled with a thick layer of poison. It was as if the poison was continuously seeping out from the depths of the sea, so thick that even the sea could not melt it. Fei Rui and the rest swam to this point and could no longer go any nearer. Their expressions were solemn, as if they were suffocating. Gu Mingming didn't want to force them, so she asked them to retreat. She and Wabiai could go down alone. Fei Rui was worried, but he also knew that with his powers he would only cause more trouble if he went down. So he instructed Gu Mingming not to force herself, and to retreat if she felt something was wrong. She must not force herself. Gu Mingming made a reassuring gesture and asked them to retreat further and not be affected by the poison. Fei Rui and Carter said that they would meet her at the entrance and wait for her to come out. Gu Mingming didn't reject them. She just led Wabiai into the deepest part of the pitch-black darkness without any source of light. Gu Mingming had inherited Elvis's night vision, so her fear of the dark had already been reduced to its lowest point. But the absolute darkness and the absolute silence still gave her a creepy feeling of uneasiness. Gu Mingming instinctively grasped Wabiai's hand, but Wabiai said irritatingly, "Don't you know how strong your claws are? If you break my arm later, you can do it yourself if you encounter any danger." It had to be said that Wabiai's words effectively dispelled Gu Mingming's fear. That's right, in the entire beast world she was already the strongest among the strong. If she met with any danger she could just release her beast pressure and suppress it. If it was some kind of demon or ghost, didn't she have a lonely old man's father to back her up? *CK she had someone on top of her too, okay? He was a legitimate second-generation immortal. Because of Snake's tier of the beast deity, Gu Mingming's body was now immune to all poisons, because there was nothing more poisonous than the blood in her body. Fighting poison with poison, it was only natural that the weaker side would be completely devoured. However, Wabiai clearly did not possess such strength. The deeper he went, the denser the poisonous fog became. Wabiai was starting to feel a little powerless. Gu Mingming didn't want Wabiai in front of her, so she asked him to return and wait with Fei Rui and the rest. But Wabiai said, "If I leave you alone, you can forget about raising your head in front of him for the rest of your life." Digression. Yeah, today's update is over. However, Gu Mingming did not have much interest in surveying the geography of the seabed. She just walked along the path that was paved with mud from the seabed. Speaking of which, it was very strange. There was clearly still water below, but there was no water flowing. It was clearly the same seabed mud, but there was a forest path that formed a sharp contrast with the mud beside it, as if it was guiding her forward. After taking 2 steps, Gu Mingming realized something was wrong. The speed at which her feet sank was getting faster and faster, but it was getting harder and harder to pull out. Underwater swamp? Gu Mingming frowned and wanted to swim across the sky. Chapter 776. Gu Mingming tried to walk around from the side of the small path, but she realized that the suction force from the side was stronger. She had just placed her feet lightly on the ground when there was already a force sucking her in, almost sucking her in. Wabiai used his snake tail to lift Gu Mingming up onto his head. He had already transformed into his original form. The huge snake head was as big as a train and Gu Mingming sat on it stably. The thick snake body slithered along the path like a fish in water. Gu Mingming giggled. Luckily Wabiai had insisted on coming down with her. Otherwise she really didn't know how to get down. "Little shit, I didn't expect you to be so reliable." Gu Mingming patted Wabiai's head. Wabiai stuck out his tongue and said to Gu Mingming in snake language, "If you call me little shit again, do you believe I won't throw you into the mud?" Gu Mingming shrugged. "I don't believe you." Wabiai gritted his teeth and didn't reply. Because he didn't believe it either. Because of Wabiai's cheat-like nature, they reached the end of the path after about half an hour. It was rather boring and nothing happened. Then, Gu Mingming was even more confused. The ocean behind them was like a huge water ball, rippling with water, but the light was blocked off. And the place they were at now was actually dry and filled with air. It was not an underwater cave or any other land. They were at the bottom of the ocean, but the ocean was behind them, as if there was an invisible wall of water blocking off the ocean. Not a single drop of water flowed in. Wabiai had also transformed back into his human form. And the miraculous thing was that his injuries had actually healed. Not only that, Gu Mingming even felt that his skin had become better than before. She had heard that there was a sea mud face mask that was selling well, but she didn't expect the effects to be so good. Gu Mingming secretly decided that she would dig some up when she returned later. It would be good to give it to her friends and family as local specialties, right? Wabiai also noticed the changes on his body, but he didn't take it to heart. He just urged Gu Mingming to hurry on. Not long after, Gu Mingming saw a huge clam shell. Yes, just a dried clam shell. As expected, not all demons and ghosts could live for more than 1,000 years. Gu Mingming went forward and wanted to pry open the clamshell to take a look. But the moment her hand touched the clamshell, it cracked and shattered into pieces. Was it eroded by the wind? Gu Mingming shrugged her shoulders helplessly. She pushed the shredded clamshell to one side and found a pearl the size of a fist. It was black and glowed with a dark green light. It was faint and gave off a mysterious vibe. Gu Mingming waited in her hand and looked around to see if there was anything else. She thought to herself, was this the kiss of the ocean? A black pearl? It was a little big, but no matter how he looked at it, there was nothing special about it. The luminous pearl that Elvis had given her to play with previously was not much smaller than this. She had crushed it just like that. It did not seem to be that rare. Gu Mingming held it in her hands for a long time, but still could not think of anything else. If the kiss of the ocean was not referring to the shattered clam shell, then it could only be referring to this pearl. And on the way back, Gu Mingming truly experienced the awesomeness of this pearl. Chapter 777. Gu Mingming was stunned by the scene before her the moment she entered the poisonous fog from the freshwater. The poisonous mist swirled, and like the drain of a bathtub that had been opened, it gradually disappeared from the drain. And this drain was the black pearl in Gu Mingming's hand, the kiss of the ocean. What the heck? Don't judge a pearl by its cover. Gu Mingming stared in bewilderment as the poisonous fog swirled into a huge whirlpool like a tornado. Then, the thinnest part of the fog was rapidly sucked into the black pearl. She didn't know how to react. After a long while, when Gu Mingming regained her senses, the poisonous fog had already thinned to the point where she could vaguely see what was going on 3 to 5 meters away. Amidst the dilution of the seawater, there was a sense of ink-stained beauty. Gu Mingming thought about how Wabiai had to swim for half a day to bring her down. No matter how powerful the pearl was, it would take some time to absorb the fog. It would be too much of a waste of time to swim back after it was done. Not to mention Fei Rue and Carter, Elvis and Leah didn't know what was going on down there. Wouldn't they go crazy seeing her taking so long to return? So Gu Mingming leaned over to Wabiai and said, "Let's swim back as we swim. I don't think we can finish absorbing the fog in such a short time." Wabiai had originally come with Gu Mingming. He wasn't interested in the poisonous fog, nor the kiss of the ocean. So when he heard Gu Mingming's words, he nodded and held Gu Mingming under his arm as he swam back slowly. He even intentionally swam towards the areas with the thickest poisonous fog so that the pearl could absorb the fog faster. Before they could swim out of the poisonous fog, Gu Mingming smelled blood. She instinctively frowned. Could it be that the giant fish tribe and the mermaid tribe had gotten into a fight again? Tsk, why were these fish more aggressive than lions and tigers? Gu Mingming was worried that Fei Rue would be at a disadvantage, so she asked Wabiai to speed up. The closer they got, the more Gu Mingming felt that something was wrong. The sounds of fighting were rather loud. It didn't seem like something Fei Rue and Carter could create. After all, with Fei Rue's small physique, he was nothing in front of Kite. It was a one-sided abuse. It was impossible for him to cause such a ruckus. Furthermore, Carter still wanted to woo Melinda, so he couldn't kill Fei Rue. If he really beat Fei Rue up, then he could forget about developing a relationship with Melinda that was more than friendship in this lifetime. Gu Mingming choked on her saliva as she charged out of the poisonous fog. It was not a problem with the seawater, but the blood content of the seawater was too high. Gu Mingming almost doubted her own eyes. What was going on? Did he swim into the burial pit of the sea race? Why were there so many corpses of the sea race? Although they had been beaten back to their original forms and were just fish, Gu Mingming could clearly tell that they were not ordinary fish, but from the ocean tribe. But after returning to their original forms, Gu Mingming could not recognize any of them. The corpses of the sea folk were different from those of ordinary fish. When ordinary fish died, their corpses would float up, but the corpses of the sea folk would sink. After the poisonous fog thinned, the corpses would slowly sink into the poisonous fog. Their bodies were already wounded and they did not have a strong resistance to poison. As a result, even after 80% of the poisonous fog had been absorbed, their corpses continued to rot in the poisonous fog until not even their bones were left. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.